The fog wolf's final charge shattered Li Wei's shield, tore open his shoulder, and left bones shining beneath the firelight. Everyone else had faced a handful of monsters, yet nearly 100 wolves and a purple ruler had chosen his shelter. Li Wei should have died that night, but the smallest creature in his home was about to change the battle. One moment Li Wei was at his bee farm. Then without warning, everything changed. Li Wei pulled out his phone and nothing looked right. All his apps were gone. Instead, there were 8 strange dark icons, and the screen said barren wasteland where the time used to be. Li Wei had been pulled into another world. But then Li Wei thought about her. The woman who gave him all her savings when Li Wei went broke with a little smiley face drawn on the note. Li Wei had to focus on staying alive. One was like a chat room, 100,000 people but nobody talking. Another showed his stats: health, hunger, thirst, sanity. Li Wei could bond with a queen bee and control her hive. No system voice guiding him. But this open wasteland was a terrible spot for that, so Li Wei held off. It was his queen bee calling him his king. They could talk mind to mind now. Bees need flowers. They'd starve if they stayed. So Li Wei picked up the heavy hive and started walking towards some trees that looked a little less dead. Someone or something was reaching out to him. A message said his relative Chun Yun was inviting him to explore the eternal realm together. Chun Yun, that's his girlfriend. The world spun and blurred. It was so much better than the wasteland Li Wei had been stuck in. Then Li Wei saw her just a few meters away wearing her gray tracksuit, her competition bow in hand. She didn't say anything, but Li Wei felt her tears soaking through his shirt. She pulled away fast, wiped her face, and pretended nothing happened. Li Wei checked her stats. She had a rare purple talent that let her summon someone close to her into this world, but it cost her 50 points of mental energy permanently. Her bow came with her too, a special weapon that makes energy arrows on its own. Her area was called Greenfield Grove, much nicer than his barren wasteland. They agreed on the obvious next step: find a spot to build a shelter. Li Wei carried the heavy beehive the whole way. They looked around but couldn't find water or high ground. Then Li Wei spotted something strange, a huge tree standing alone in a clearing. Its bark was almost black, and about halfway up the surface looked like a face frozen in pain. The rules said to place the shelter. What if they placed it inside the tree? The tree started shaking hard. The bark twisted and shifted, and right where Chun Yun had been standing, the outline of a door formed. They had their shelter. The tree had turned into their shelter, a round wooden room about 20 square meters with rough walls and a big pillar in the center. It restored sanity and stamina just by being inside. Chun Yun opened the shelter app and shared full permissions with him without even asking. They didn't need words for that kind of thing. With the shelter placed, all the apps on his phone finally unlocked. The fire pit would light itself once built, which was a relief. Li Wei went to the beehive and asked the queen to send out scouts. Not perfect, since a single bee can only tell food from threat, but way better than stumbling around blind. Then Chun Yun called him over to the storage box in the corner. They found a stone axe, a stone pickaxe, 3 breadfruits, and 3 coconut fruits. The breadfruit had soft white flesh inside like warm bread. The coconut water was cool and sweet. There was a marketplace where survivors could trade items. If Li Wei would known about that sooner, Li Wei wouldn't have carried the beehive by hand the whole way. Li Wei told Chun Yun the plan: build the fire pit first, then start gathering wood and stone. People were finally talking in the chat groups. They'd been so focused on surviving that they hadn't even heard the notifications. 100,000 people, and most were panicking. People were searching for family members. A man named Yang Tong, a former military commander, posted a clear survival guide. Stay calm, get water and food, light a fire before dark, explore safely, and stick together. The shelters people built were all different. Most got basic water quality. Someone posted a photo of a tree full of red fruit they'd found right outside their door. Li Wei checked in with his queen bee. Chun Yun grabbed her bow and quiver, and Li Wei took the stone axe. Li Wei picked a medium-sized tree and started chopping. It was harder than Li Wei expected. His phone scanned it, and the wood went straight into his inventory. That storage system was something else, turning a whole tree into a little icon on his screen. While Li Wei chopped, Chun Yun searched for stones and found a tough grass called fiber grass that could be used for rope, but they needed proper tools to harvest it. She crouched, pulled an energy arrow, aimed, and let it fly. The arrow vanished after hitting its target. She lifted her chin and said, "Of course," looking proud. Its description said it could be tamed to scout for them. They stored the rabbit and sat under a tree to rest. Chun Yun's head leaned against his shoulder. A worker bee landed on his shoulder for a moment. Even in this strange world, having his bees around felt comforting. Li Wei went back to chopping trees. His arms burned and his stamina dropped to around 80, but Li Wei kept going. Then Chun Yun called him over excited. While they ate, a bee flew up buzzing urgently around his head. They followed it through the grass to a spot where an old wooden box was buried. A treasure chest. Inside, they found 2 blueprints for a chair and a bed, plus a wooden stick that worked as a weapon. They spent the rest of the afternoon gathering resources. Chun Yun and Li Wei took turns chopping trees until they had a decent pile of wood. Li Wei checked his phone and saw his sanity was draining even though night hadn't fully come yet. They looked at each other and both knew they had to go. On the way back, Chun Yun spotted a dark shape sliding behind a tree. Li Wei tried scanning it with his phone, but it left no trace. When they finally reached their tree shelter and shut the door behind them, Li Wei leaned against the wall and just breathed. His sanity had dropped to 129 out of 200 just from being outside near dusk. Chun Yun was worse, down to 99, and she said her head felt heavy below that number. Night in this world was dangerous, and not just because of creatures. They needed to build that fire pit right away. The stones stacked themselves into a circle, and the wood caught fire on its own. Li Wei shut the door tight and felt safe for the first time since arriving here. The bees were all back inside, quiet and still. On the other side of the room, the workbench was building itself, invisible energy piecing boards together. Chun Yun took the 2 rabbits they'd caught and started cleaning them with the stone axe. She skewered 1 rabbit on a branch and set it by the fire to roast. The number in their chat group had dropped from nearly full to 99,121. Almost 900 people were gone just since nightfall. The chat was pure panic. He was sitting in total darkness, listening to something breathe outside his shelter. Shadow creatures come out in the dark and attack shelters. Fear and panic drain your mental energy faster, and when it drops too low, the creatures target you more. Deep sleep stops them from noticing you. And if your shelter's durability hits 0, it's gone. Did people die to learn these lessons? His information matched what they'd felt at dusk, that creeping fear, the sanity draining. They decided Chun Yun would share the key points in her chat group. Some were desperate, running out of firewood, terrified by the sounds outside. Energy was too precious to waste on extra words. She turned off her phone and looked at the rabbit over the fire. They tore into the rabbit meat by the fire. They split a breadfruit and washed it down with coconut water. While they ate, Li Wei scrolled through the marketplace on his phone. People trading from inside their shelters. Stone was in high demand too, since everyone needed it for fire pits after hearing Yang Tong's warning. Earlier, they'd seen ravens that could be tamed as scouts, so a cage could be valuable. Before Li Wei could even think about it, his listing vanished. Chun Yun and Li Wei looked at each other. In this world, getting injured could mean death. Chun Yun said they should trade their extra rabbit for one. The trade cost an extra energy point because the seller was far away, but it was worth it. His lady, does your night meet your standards? Chun Yun actually laughed. They compared the 2 chat groups' marketplaces. They figured different areas probably had different resources. While Chun Yun started dozing off by the fire, Li Wei grabbed the stone axe and carved some rough wooden bowls and chopsticks from branches. Li Wei told her they'd hold water, and that's what mattered. Li Wei stayed up waiting for the workbench to finish building itself. Axes, pickaxes, shovels, torches, all basic stuff. Li Wei made 3 torches from branches and dry leaves. Li Wei thought about building the wooden bed from their blueprint, but the room was already small. Li Wei lay down next to Chun Yun and put his arm around her. Outside, strange shadows drifted through the darkness, but they didn't seem to notice their treehouse. Chun Yun woke up before him and restarted the fire. The treehouse's healing effect was real. Li Wei checked in with the queen bee. Li Wei told her to expand the search area and look for treasure chests or anything unusual. The bees could scout up to 10 kilometers. Li Wei bragged to Chun Yun about catching up to her, but she showed him her screen. Her body was naturally getting stronger. They headed south into the deep forest. The trees grew massive the further they went. They found mushrooms, but they were all poisonous. They spotted some blackbirds' rooks sitting in a tree with a nest. Then they found a huge patch of tough vines perfect for weaving. The noise spooked the birds and Li Wei got a bad feeling. 4 wolves burst out of the trees and surrounded them. Chun Yun shot first. Her arrow dropped the nearest wolf instantly. Li Wei shoved his shield forward and caught its claws. Another wolf tried to circle around to his neck, but Chun Yun's second arrow hit it right in the eye. A 4th wolf went for Chun Yun while she was still aiming. 4 wolves down. His heart was pounding so hard Li Wei thought it had burst. They drained the wolf's blood into his ugly wooden bowl, about 17 of it. Disgusting, but blood is protein and salt. They pushed deeper looking for water or stone. They got home with about 8 hours of daylight left. No water source, no stones, but they had vines, wolf meat, blood, and hard-earned combat experience. When Li Wei got back inside and set down his shield, the tension finally left his body. Li Wei went to the beehive and connected with the queen bee. She was excited about making honey there. Even better, they'd found another treasure chest to the northwest under a dead tree. Chunyun looked tired too. She took the wolf blood they'd collected, cut the clotted mass into slices, and roasted them on a flat stone over the fire. While she started butchering the wolf carcasses, Li Wei sat on the floor trying to weave a bird trap from the vines they'd gathered. The wolves turned out to be mostly skin and bones, barely any fat. Chunyun worked carefully with a stone knife, separating the hides, cutting the legs at the joints, splitting ribs from spine. They talked about buying water from the marketplace, but the prices were insane. In all the survival novels Li Wei used to read, the hero sold water to get rich. Li Wei tried trading some wolf leg meat for that birdcage blueprint Li Wei would seen yesterday. Chunyun looked at it and asked if it could actually catch birds. She smiled and handed him some shredded meat for bait. Li Wei went outside, set the basket upside down in a clearing, propped one side up with thin sticks, and tied the bait underneath. Back inside, Chunyun was hanging strips of wolf meat on a vine rack above the fire to smoke into jerky. The bees led them to the treasure chest. The queen had found a wooden box hidden at the base of a dead tree. Inside were two things that made his heart jump: a farmland blueprint and half a kilogram of green quality mineral salt. The farmland blueprint needed fertilizer, wood branches, and empty territory. The shelter needed upgrading first, and that meant 100 units of wood. By afternoon, they'd gathered 25 more logs, some branches, leaves, and stones. On the way back, Chunyun stopped him. Li Wei lifted the edge and grabbed a crow. Another crow. Li Wei carried both crows home, feathers sticking to his head, looking ridiculous. They were dangerously thirsty. Tomorrow, finding water was no longer optional. Chunyun cooked up the wolf organs over the fire and sprinkled on some of their new salt. The salt killed the gamey smell and brought out real flavor. They ate everything, all the organs, all the blood skewers. His trade offer for the birdcage blueprint was still sitting there, no response. They haggled through private chat. Chunyun shook her head when Li Wei was about to give in and offer more. So Li Wei held firm. The trade went through 4 jin of wolf meat for 1 birdcage blueprint. Zhang Han seemed like someone worth staying in touch with. Salt meat, 2 crows. A birdcage. Blueprint, a farmland map. They had to find water, or none of the rest would matter. Li Wei put one of the crows inside and checked its stats. The cage had a taming feature. After that, it could scout the area and report back twice daily. Chunyun wanted to sell them right away, but Li Wei told her to wait until dark, when everyone was stuck in their shelters with nothing to do but browse the marketplace. Li Wei listed 2 trades, 1 cage for 20 units of stone and 1 for 5 units of living wood. Most people offered basic weapons or scattered materials, nothing worth the cage. Then a blue quality offer appeared, a broken water element fragment from a tough-looking guy named Luo Yao. He agreed without hesitation, added 20 jin of creek water to the trade. Right after the trade, Luo Yao invited him to a small group chat. The group owner was Yang Tong, the military captain, whose survival tips had saved lives on the first night. Li Wei hugged Chunyun from behind while she poured hot water into their bowls. They held each other for a moment, then Li Wei made new tools at the workbench. 2 stone axes and a stone sickle, burning through all their remaining energy. That evening, Li Wei wove 8 more bird traps while Chunyun rested by the fire. Then they had their private moment together. Afterward, Li Wei checked his stats and noticed his mental energy had actually gone up. Then Chunyun found cheap wooden basins on the marketplace, 5 for just 6 units of wood. The rain was solving their water crisis. Li Wei took the water element fragment and held it out in the rain. Then the queen bee sent him an urgent feeling. She wanted the fragment badly. The treehouse's soil fertility had dropped to 65 out of 100. Fertilizing had to happen soon, or their shelter would start falling apart. His base strength had gone up to 6, a 2-point increase in 2 days. His body was weak from years of office work, and Li Wei needed to change that fast. Every bit of strength could mean the difference between life and death out here. Behind the treehouse, Li Wei dug a shallow hole and threw in everything disgusting they had. Rabbit guts, wolf remains, blood organs. Chunyun had collected ash from the fire pit, so Li Wei sprinkled that on top, then covered it all with dry leaves and soil. They couldn't let their treehouse weaken. They needed 100 units of wood to upgrade the shelter. Each of them grabbed a stone axe and picked a spot. Swing chips fly, wipe sweat, repeat. In this world, any noise could mean danger. A golden retriever burst out of the bushes, followed by a young guy with glasses covered in mud and sweat. The moment he saw them, his face lit up like he'd found his family. Not threatening, more like, please don't hurt his idiot owner. Wang Xing said he recognized Chun Yun from the survival tips she'd posted in the chat group. His talent was communicating with dogs, and Duo could help scout and find food. Li Wei felt for the kid, but Li Wei had to say no. Their shelter was small, resources were tight. Duo whimpered and nudged his leg, but Li Wei offered to add him as a friend so they could stay in touch. Before he left, Li Wei pulled him aside and warned him, don't trust everyone. Bad people can be worse than wolves. He nodded seriously and headed off with Duo into the trees. Li Wei decided to have the bees watch their shelter from his direction just as a precaution. If anyone or any dog approached, they'd know early. Chun Yun also cut some fibergrass with the stone sickle. As the light turned golden, the familiar unease started creeping back. Still had to check those bird traps on the way back. When they got back inside, the treehouse was packed. Dried wolf meat hung on a rack over the fire. The beehive sat in its corner, and now they had 5 more crows. Li Wei got to work at the workbench making cages. Each one cost 1 energy point to craft and another to list for trade. A guy named Jiang Han had found 2 pieces of living wood, the rare material Li Wei needed to upgrade their shelter. While Li Wei worked, Chun Yun was doing a dozen things at once, turning dried meat strips. Checking the wolf hide, she was softening in ash water and laying out fiberglass to dry. Watching her manage all these little details of daily life in the middle of a survival nightmare, it hit him somewhere deep. Li Wei scooped about 30 grams of honey from the hive. Li Wei dissolved it in warm water and split it with Chun Yun. You can't live on just meat. Chun Yun joined in this time. Just the sound of the fire and their breathing. Li Wei listed the first one and traded it to Jiang Han for the 2 pieces of living wood. Li Wei finally had what Li Wei needed to upgrade the treehouse. For the other 3 cages, Li Wei left the listing vague trade for weapons armor or useful items. The best one was an obsidian battle blade, blue quality, plus 30 combat power with a bleeding effect. The blade was light as air and had a dark, glass-like glow in the firelight. Not as flashy, but with their berry bush and farmland plans, it could be very valuable down the road. The third offer came from Yang Tong himself, a pair of green-quality bone leg guards with plus 18 strength and an intimidation trait that scared weaker creatures. If Li Wei said no, nobody would know and things wouldn't be awkward. Li Wei respected that even more and accepted the trade. Li Wei strapped the leg guards on. Cold handle impossibly light the edge, cutting the air with a whisper. The recipe book had a learning progress bar, so you couldn't just memorize it instantly. The sweat, the aching muscles, the feeling of getting a tiny bit stronger each day. When the sun came up, Li Wei placed the last unit of wood on the ground. Finally enough to upgrade their shelter. They moved the beehive away just in case, and Chun Yun hit the confirm button. While they waited, Li Wei checked with the queen bee. Li Wei told her to keep watching, especially around the dead-looking trees. They headed out to dig up the berry bush they'd found earlier. Then they chopped more trees for tonight's birdcage production. On the way, their traps caught 4 more crows. When they got back, the upgrade was done, and the treehouse looked completely different. The trunk was thicker, darker, healthier. Inside, the space had more than doubled from 20 to almost 50 square meters. Durability jumped to 500, energy capacity went up to 30, and the recovery trait improved to plus 3 per hour for both stamina and sanity. Blue quality gave them 30 energy compared to the 20 that white shelters got after upgrading. Best of all, they unlocked an expanded area outside for building and a new barricade blueprint. They now had 12 crows stored up. Li Wei made the first cage but decided not to sell it right away. Chun Yun found someone selling bird droppings fertilizer on the marketplace, 20 units for a fair price. Li Wei also messaged Wang Xing with a tip: buy food, make bird traps, catch crows, and sell caged birds. Chun Yun asked why Li Wei was helping him. With the fertilizer ready, Li Wei started building their farmland, a 3-meter square plot in front of the treehouse. The energy flowed out from the shelter and sank into the soil. Cage after cage listed for trade offers flooding in. A stone cooking pot with a chance to give food. Special effects. A green wood bed that helped recovery. 5 rolls of herbal bandages, a wooden breastplate for his chest, and a stone slab roasting recipe. That night, Chun Yun and Li Wei lay on their new bed, an actual bed, not the hard floor. The darkness that crept in every night, those shadow creatures that had already killed nearly 1,000 people, Would they really stay content just wandering outside their walls forever? Li Wei planted the berry bush in their new farmland that morning. The treehouse's fertility had dropped to 62. After the upgrade, it was eating through nutrients faster than before, like a growing kid needing more food. Chunyun called him in for dinner. She'd learned the stone slab grilling recipe already and was frying thick wolf meat in their new stone pot with salt. Even better, the food triggered a special trait, a 5% boost to exercise effectiveness for 6 hours. Right after they finished eating, the queen bee sent him an urgent message. Her scouts had found living wood deep in the forest. The living wood wasn't going anywhere, and rushing and unprepared could get them killed. But not knowing what that creature was felt even more dangerous. Better to observe from a distance now. Chunyun had her bow and a full quiver. They packed bandages, fire supplies, dried meat, and water. The trees grew massive. Along the way, they collected dead wood moss, more tough vines, and a patch of vivid purple-red mushrooms with white spots. They couldn't eat them, but Li Wei stored them carefully. No birds, no insects, just their footsteps and breathing. Then the guide bee landed on his shoulder in tinny trembling. Chunyun covered her mouth to stop herself from gasping. In the center stood one of those completely normal trees, the kind that holds living wood. A nest deathly white, almost 4 meters tall, shaped like a fallen egg. Pieces of corpses, some old, some fresh, were scattered around it. Blue quality spider nest. 20 venomous spiders inside with a special trait that slowed any non-spider creature's movement by 40% within its range. Now they turned and started creeping back, watching every step. Spider silk a tripwire. Seconds later, 10 black spiders the size of basketballs exploded out of the nest and charged straight at them. Every movement felt like wading through glue. "Defend here," Li Wei shouted. Li Wei spotted a thick tree nearby. "Climb first." Chunyun grabbed the rungs, but the slowing effect made her painfully slow. The spiders closed to 10 meters, then 5. 2 spiders split open like they were made of paper. The third bit down on his ankle but hit the bone leg guards instead of flesh. Then an energy arrow punched through it from above. That same arrow went clean through and killed another spider behind it. Li Wei scrambled up the ladder while the remaining spiders were in chaos from Chunyun's attack. Cold eyes, steady hands, arrow after arrow. The surviving 4 tried to retreat to their nest, but Chunyun wasn't letting them go. 4 arrows in rapid succession, 2 more dropped. Only a single spider made it back into a hole. Li Wei hung on the ladder, gasping, drenched in cold sweat. They shared some water and tried to calm down. Overall strength of 30, higher than either of them. If Li Wei hadn't had the obsidian blade, if Chunyun hadn't been such an incredible shot, if they hadn't brought that ladder, they'd be dead. 11 spiders were still alive inside the nest. Chunyun agreed. From up on the ladder, Chunyun spotted something behind the nest. A small plant wrapped in spider silk, purple quality, a mandrake grass, filled with pure energy that living things could absorb. This was probably why the spiders had built their nest here. 11 spiders were still inside, but a purple quality plant was too rare to walk away from. But this time they just circled around angrily and retreated when they couldn't reach them in the tree. So Li Wei came up with a plan. The moment Li Wei touched their tripwires, they'd swarm him, and Chunyun could pick them off from above while Li Wei fought the rest. Chunyun's first 3 arrows dropped 2 instantly and scattered the rest. Li Wei sidestepped to avoid being surrounded, turning a 5-on-1 into something manageable. 3 spiders sliced in half with one sweep. The last one rushing at him got an arrow straight through its open mouth, pinning it to the ground. The 12th, the one that escaped earlier, was already dead nearby with an arrow still in it. Fighting was terrifying, but avoiding it completely in this world meant slow death. Controlled risk was better than no practice at all. From the spider bodies, Li Wei harvested venom that could coat weapons glands that could be ground into healing powder and silk. The description said eating it without special treatment could cause mutations. The surface wriggled slightly where Li Wei poked it, still alive somehow, even without the spiders. As for the mandrake, the description said it could only be properly harvested after dusk. They wait until evening, Li Wei told Chunyun. Then they come back for it. She nodded. Tearing apart the spider nest was the worst thing Li Wei had ever done. Li Wei switched to the stone axe, and with every swing, thick fluid oozed out, stinking horribly. They pushed through the nausea and stripped the whole thing down, collecting 40 units of spider silk. Then Chunyun screamed. He'd been a survivor just like them, dead only a few days. Chunyun was shaking. Li Wei put his arm around her and told her they needed to remember him and then keep living. Corpse fluid poured out and soaked the ground. An old clay flower pot and the dead man's phone. The phone was labeled the civilization gift, a survival phone, that could be absorbed by other survivors after the owner died. The flower pot was blue quality with a special trait. The temptation of a purple quality plant made him take the risk alone, and it killed him. They buried him under a big tree. Then they chopped down the normal tree nearby and got 2 more pieces of living wood. His sanity was at 138. They sat down at some dried meat and honey water and tried to recover. Then Chun-Yun called him over. The mandrake was glowing. A faint purple light pulsed around it like breathing, and those golden veins on the top leaves seemed to flow with light. Evening had come and the plant was waking up. Li Wei lifted the basket over the plant and reached in to dig around the roots. The root, shaped like a tiny white radish, jerked out of the soil by itself and started wriggling. His hand shot out and grabbed the root before it could escape. The whole thing was thrashing in his grip. Their mental energy was dangerously low. Now Li Wei saw that black shadow again, Chun-Yun said in a very low voice, each word tense. Li Wei held Chun-Yun's cold fingers tightly. The dim light of dusk was thinning visibly. Chun-Yun's breathing began to become irregular. The edges of the leaves were no longer clear and the tree trunks looked slightly blurry. Her pupils looked a bit unfocused and her gaze was slowly drifting. How much mental energy do you have left? He still had over 130 points left, though he also felt a vague pressure and a grayish tint in his vision, but not as severe as hers. The consequence of losing 50 mental points, he held her hand tightly with real strength. Go back, light a fire, cook some meat soup, and drink it warm. But Chun-Yun's steps became more and more unsteady, and she staggered. Honey. Chun-Yun leaned on his shoulder, panting quickly. His vision is a little blurry. Just ahead, Li Wei half supports, half helps her, quickening his steps. Just as the outline of the shelter becomes faintly visible through the dark gaps in the trees, a shadow appears. This time it emerged directly from the shadow of a thick oak tree, skimming along the ground, rushing toward the two of them. Li Wei's muscles tense instantly. He doesn't let go of Chun-Yun, holding her with one arm, while pulling out a black obsidian blade with the other. It has no eyes or facial features, but Li Wei feels a hollow gaze fixed on his face. Then suddenly, like smoke blown away by the wind or ink dropped into water, it vanishes without warning, dissolving into the air. Only when he's sure there's no more danger does he slowly lower his sword. Li Wei pushes open the wooden door with his shoulder, and they tumble inside together, slamming the door shut with all his strength. The light and heat fill the space instantly, dispelling the chilling darkness that clings to their bones and cutting off the oppressive gloom outside. The trembling and shadowy haze that clouded her vision recedes like the tide. The world regains its clear outline and proper colors. It's okay now. Li Wei also sits by the fire, wrapping his arms around her as she approaches. Thinking quietly, he says, now that Li Wei thought about it, they're not much different from that survivor who died in the spider's nest. Chun-Yun looked up at him. Knowing that your condition isn't good, your mental energy is low and you're far from home. Yet your mind is still focused on the resources you almost have. Chun-Yun silently nodded. One successful fight and a purple harvest almost made them forget the harsh rules of this world. Li Wei also just realized she whispered, low mental energy feels like this. They can your judgment and pushes you toward danger. They used a risky evening to define a clearer boundary between desire and survival. At the workbench, Gigi, a small 2-palm-high white radish with 3 shiny little leaves on top, was circling Li Wei's shoes. After releasing it, it seemed to adapt quickly to the warmth inside, changing from fear to happiness. But its unique language Li Wei couldn't understand at all, plus the 31 units left from upgrading yesterday and making the cage. As for the branches, he was too lazy to count, but there were plenty as shown by the firewood outside the shelter. Li Wei sat down by the fire pit next to Chun-Yun. Li Wei found something Li Wei haven't told you yet. You won't be mad, right, G? G? Suddenly, the mandela grass had moved to the warm fire pit, too. Chun-Yun glanced at the small creature, happily enjoying itself, deliberately turned away and snorted. Li Wei don't want to hear it. Li Wei held back his laughter and intentionally stretched his voice. Really don't want to hear. You're so annoying. Chun-Yun turned back, scolding him with a light punch, and the tension in her eyes finally eased a little. What did you find that you were hiding from him? Li Wei leaned close to her ear, lowered his voice with a teasing tone. Li Wei, see, you're so exhausted tonight. At your age, still not serious. Chun-Yun's face flushed, suddenly unsure if it was from embarrassment or heat, and she pushed him away hard. Look, it's laughing at you. All you do is think about nonsense. Li Wei chuckled happily, successfully shifting her attention. Don't they have anything else? His teeth are almost worn down by this stuff. What do you think? Chun-Yun sipped her soup, rolled her eyes at him. If they didn't trade some of the dried wolf meat, it would be gone after a few days. They should save it, and with some honey, it should last them about 10 days. 10 days? Li Wei chewed on the number, frowning. The key is they can't rely only on honey for carbs. They now have farmland, and today they still have energy left. Li Wei'll check it out later. By the way, he remembered another important matter. Wang Xing spoke in the large group explaining the purpose of the crow cage, and many wanted to exchange theirs. Today, all the bird cages made will be exchanged for bird droppings fertilizer. Farms need fertilizer and tree houses do too. They can't run out. After discussing the main matter, the soup in the pot was almost finished. Li Wei looked at Chun-Yun's gentle but tired face under the firelight, moved closer, and wrapped his arm around her waist. His voice lowered, carrying a gentle tone that left no room for refusal. Chun-Yun's ears turned slightly red. Omitted for length. About 3 hours later, mandrake grass had been curious under the bed for 3 hours, chirping along with the rhythm now and then. After completing her deal with Chi Mu Yao, she quickly fell asleep. Li Wei was also very tired but forced himself to stay alert. He opened a second farm plot, crafted 4 new stone axes, and with the last completed bird cage, he exchanged for 20 cluster grain seeds in the shop. After finishing everything, he held Chun-Yun softly in his arms. He sat up and saw Chun-Yun busy by the fire pit, looking healthy, with a rosy complexion, smiling as she cooked. She glanced back at him. There's honey water nearby, warm. He took a long, deep breath and looked around the room. Chun-Yun pointed to a corner of the shelter with a wooden spoon. In the corner inside a deep brown thorny flower pot, the soil was normally empty, but now a mandrake plant was sitting upright. It had somehow planted itself back into the pot. The flower pot's information had been updated. And about the mandrake itself? Plant thorny mandrake. Purple. Level. First age, 10 years, special trait. Magic essence. Contains a high concentration of pure, easily absorbed energy essence. Li Wei gently touched one of its leaves. At the edge of the leaf, tiny bumps could be felt. A purple quality plant that adapts to its environment and periodically produces special materials was an unexpected delight. After caring for this suddenly obedient little creature, Li Wei picked up the gift of civilization survival phone he had obtained from the dead in the spider nest. The phone shell was cold. The screen lit up, but all the app icons were a dull gray, unresponsive. Detected a compatible survival phone for fusion. Li Wei thought for a moment, then decisively pressed yes. The iPhone's body, starting from the edges, quickly became transparent as if erased by an invisible rubber. Almost at the same time, a notification popped up on his phone. Please choose from the following apps to upgrade. Li Wei called Chun-Yun. 2 options. Physical attributes or shelter. The shelter is related to them, but you've linked it to his shelter. Li Wei thought it's better to wait until you have your own shelter before choosing this. App upgrade will take about 3 minutes. Li Wei unconsciously rubbed the edge of his phone, wondering if he could just add points to his attributes directly. Upgrade complete. Li Wei immediately opened the familiar icon for physical attributes. The interface layout had a slight change. Below the 6 basic attribute values, there was a new tab. Follower 0 per 1. You can invite a wanderer to become your follower. Tap for details. After reading the details, Li Wei took a deep breath, feeling like he had contributed a little to the warming of the eternal domain. Chun-Yun quickly looked through it, her face also turning serious. This looks almost like a slave contract. Maybe they'll need it someday. Li Wei took back the phone, closed the interface, and ended the topic. To the right front of the treehouse, the dark brown soil was soft and moist. Across from the farmland where the gray berry bushes grow, there is a narrow path between them. Next to him, the gray berry bushes transplanted yesterday had already stood upright with leaves spread out, looking healthy and lively. If they live, he said, patting the dirt on his hands, feeling more at ease. After a simple breakfast, the two of them took their tools and empty cages and headed to the forest edge to collect the bird traps from yesterday. Chun-Yun carefully moved it into a wooden bird cage. Chun-Yun looked at the frightened blackbird in the cage and suddenly asked, "Those shadowy monsters at night are so dangerous." He thought for a moment and slowly said, "Li Wei guessed those shadow monsters, let's call them that, probably target their attacks selectively. When their mental energy is low, they can see them or even be attacked. Roughly, it's the level of intelligence, reason, or awareness. He looked at Chun-Yun. These shadow monsters are actually hunting beings with high spirits, and they, because they are smarter and more mentally active, are like torches in the dark, very noticeable. Chun-Yun pondered, like insects attracted to light, but not crashing into stones. That's about right. Li Wei nodded. This also explains why they need shelters. Chun-Yun nodded and did not ask further. They then started their routine tree-cutting work. The axe swung up and down, wood chips flew everywhere, and sweat quickly soaked their backs. By the end of the day, they had caught a total of 18 crows, and the amount of wood reached a new high of 122 units. Back at the treehouse, Li Wei felt his legs were as heavy as lead. Chun-Yun also leaned on the doorframe, her face pale with stamina at 90. This stamina, Li Wei sat against the wall, feeling it was hard even to lift his arm. His heart was pounding fast, and even when he tried to slow his breathing, he still felt short of breath. Drinking water and eating only provided very brief relief. That's better than being chased by shadow monsters. Chun-Yun also sat down beside him, her voice tired but hopeful. After resting for a while, he finally managed to stand up, piled the day's wood outside in the designated spot, and assigned the work table to make bird cages. After finishing, he sat back on a tree stump by the fire pit and took out his phone. Those who don't care about energy and just chat casually have gradually disappeared over a few days. This is also reflected in the number of survivors in the large group. Behind these vanished numbers are silent shelters and possibly even quieter endings than those in spider nests. Otherwise, he might also be one of those disappeared numbers. Li Wei was about to turn off his phone when a message from the Survival Supplies Preparation Team group chat popped up, mentioning it everyone. The message was from Yang Tong, and it made Li Wei sit up straight instantly. Unknown monsters will appear in the fog, attacking all survivors and shelters. Prioritize buying weapons armor, healing supplies, and defensive building plants. Later, Li Wei will send a warning in the regional group. The message hit like a big stone in a compound. Monsters in the fog. Can the shelter hold out? What should they prepare? Yang Tong, the exact form is unknown, but they are definitely dangerous. Li Wei suggests reinforcing doors and windows immediately and preparing long-range attack tools and melee weapons. Li Wei put down his phone and looked at Chun-Yun, noticing she was also raising her head with the same shock and tension in her eyes. Seventh night monsters in the fog. Stop barriers must be made immediately, and they need more equipment. He grabbed his phone again, fingers flying over the shop interface. He had to take the initiative, even if it meant using more energy for trading. Quickly, he focused on the first trade item, blueprint. Floral crown headpiece, green level. First tier materials needed 12 units of fresh flowers, manufacturing energy, 2 points manufacturing time, 1 hour description, a delicate headpiece woven from natural flowers that slowly soothes the wearer's mind and restores a small amount of sanity. Without hesitation, Li Wei immediately submitted a trade request, offering the recently crafted birdcage in exchange to see if the trade could work. The firelight cast Halfway's face in shadow. He stared at his phone screen, fingers rapidly tapping the virtual keyboard, pausing occasionally with a furrowed brow. Toolstone arrow mold, white level. First tier materials needed, 2 units of tier 1, stone, 4 units of tier 1, branches, manufacturing energy, 1 point time, needed 40 minutes description, a rough but practical mold. Placing it on the workbench unlocks the option to craft stone arrows. For those heavily relying on Chun-Yun's bow and arrows, its value surpasses even a green weapon. The third and fourth traits. Lightweight leather armor, green level, first tier, overall strength, 18 durability, 29 out of 29 special trait. Light and agile slightly increases agility and speed. This is for Chun-Yun. Armor oak, shield green, level first tier overall strength, 21, durability 50 out of 50. Special trait sturdy increases shield's durability. Shields. Description made from a solid piece of oak, reliable and strong. Weapon bone spike, wolf tooth, club, green level, first tier, overall strength, 19 durability, 25 out of 25 special trait. None description made from a sturdy animal bone, tightly bound together with a fierce white bone spike, embedded at the top, powerful and heavy. Each item consumes one crow cage. In District 10,086 cages are also not rare, but crows are rare and unique business. It's uncertain how long this business can last. It takes 30 minutes to make a cage, so he can only wait to craft one and trade it for an item. Blueprint simple. Watchtower green level. First tier construction materials. 20 units of first tier wood. 20 units of first tier fiber. Grass per vines. Construction energy 5 points construction time. 10 hours, special trait eagle eye. Description: a simple high vantage point, perhaps allowing you to spot danger earlier. Just feel free to negotiate. As long as the monsters in the fog are not flying units, the value of this lookout tower cannot be measured. He hung up a bird cage and applied for a trade. The trade request sank without response like a stone falling into the sea. Li Wei clenched his lips and clicked on the seller's avatar to send a friend request. Li Wei brother, Li Wei want to trade the blueprint for the lookout tower. The effect of the bird cage is well known in the group now. The reply came back quickly as if it had been prepared in advance. Send the trade request if you agree. Li Wei stared at the message. He looked at Chun Yun beside him, then remembered Yang Tong's warning about unknown monsters in the fog. Li Wei, okay, his workbench is making them now. Li Wei will send the trade request in 30 minutes. Feng Yi Bao? Li Wei will wait for you. 30 minutes later, Li Wei opened the trade interface, changed the number of bird cages to 3, and submitted again. The blueprint for the simple lookout tower has been stored inventory. Before the next bird cage was finished, Yang Tong tagged everyone in the large group 10,086. Unknown monsters will appear in the fog, attacking all survivors and shelters proactively. This message instantly sparked chaos in the 10,086 group, with many silent members suddenly flooding the chat. Yang Tong's previous 2 announcements in the group had proven to be true and effective, so no one doubted his words now. Captain Yang don't scare him. Su Xiao saw monsters in the fog. Li Wei'll trade all his food for them. Mo Ting, what do they need to reinforce the shelter? Next, Li Wei watched helplessly as the prices of items related to weapons armor, fortified shelters, and healing in the mall skyrocketed like a rocket. More often, people were shouting in large groups, trading goods, or seeking urgent supplies. Even food, which was rarely seen before, now appeared in large quantities in the mall, with sellers only wanting to exchange for higher quality green weapons or defense blueprints. Li Wei knew that the golden time he used to buy supplies with his birdcage had ended. Should they also send an early warning in the 10,010 group chat? Chun Yun asked, leaning over and looking at Li Wei. It's always good. Won't that affect their future purchases in the 10,010 channel? Chun Yun asked. She pointed to a recent refresh trade item. Simple Molotov cocktail asterisk. 20 gray quality. Level first level description, homemade dangerous item filled with mixed oils and rough accelerants, very powerful. Molotov cocktails, although they are gray quality and handmade, they still require secondary ignition. But in the current lack of area attack methods, this could be very effective for defense, especially against groups of monsters. Li Wei also just finished making a birdcage. Li Wei's spirits lifted and he quickly operated. 20 rough clay jars filled with bottles of these incendiary devices with weeds stuffed into the bottle openings were stored in his inventory. Li Wei see the clay jars are homemade and the oil too, Chun Yun said, retracting her phone and looking serious. Li Wei had sent it. She opened the input box for the 10,010 survivor group, made a few adjustments to Yang Tong's warning message, clearly and briefly edited it, then pressed send. There was a brief pause in the group chat. Attacking the shelter on purpose. Chushen tomorrow night. His shelter isn't upgraded yet. The last warning about the shadow monster was from Chun Yun. This time Li Wei believe it's real. Li Wei go out every day looking for food and haven't seen a single one. Almost immediately after Zhang Jiajia spoke, a beautiful female avatar chimed in. Some people can't stand seeing others do well. With brother Zhang's experience, following him to find food is better than just guessing. Chun Yun has no reason to lie to them. It's better to believe it might be true. No waves. Even if the chance is small, they can't afford to lose if it's a trap. Chun Yun looked at the rapidly scrolling screen, pursed her lips, and said nothing. She couldn't understand why Zhang Jiajia kept picking fights with her. Zhang Jiji find those afraid of death can keep messing around. Talent glutton. Purple eating capacity doubles. Excess energy can be converted into fat, which increases defense. Wang Shouying immediately cheered him on. His talent is so practical. This wasn't just simple doubt or disagreement. If the monster attack in the fog tonight is confirmed, then Shen Yun, who issued the earliest warning and has successfully warned before, will have an unbeatable reputation on Channel 10,010. At that time, Zhang Jieji will find it very hard to gather support or build a power base centered around himself. He can question and belittle the warning's credibility and make a bold declaration using his rare purple talent to attract attention. Looking at the large group chat, 10,086, except for Yang Tong, who else is interested in forming factions? Who has the energy for other things? However, this bold declaration seems to influence other survivors or those with similar worries. Lai Weijo Cohen of Blade Edge will also form a war alliance, only accepting brothers who are willing to fight. Li Wei was planning to form the Rose Guard sisters, banding together for warmth and mutual support. The channel suddenly becomes chaotic with slogans for forming alliances flashing across the screen. Wang Xing Hei Chun Yun, if you form a team, Li Wei will be the first to join. Wang Xing's words are direct, even a bit sharp, almost openly supporting Chun Yun. Zhang Yi Master Wang Xing is right. Chun Yun helped them last time. Chun Yun should create a faction. They follow you. The pressure instantly shifts to Chun Yun. Lai Wei, the most important thing now is to survive the monster attack tonight. They'll wait until tomorrow to see if the monsters attack the shelter tonight. They'll find out then. Wang Xing got it. Wang Xing Li Wei just talked to big sister Chun Yun. They'll see then if the monsters attack. Finally, everyone focused again on how to deal with the night attack. After finishing 5 energy points, remained enough to build a simple watchtower. Both vines and grass had been collected in plenty. Li Wei built the watchtower in front of the main gate, completely blocking the shelter's exit. The door only had a small gap to open or close. Remaining time 9 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. Weather cloudy turning to thick fog, 16 to 23 degrees Celsius. Li Wei canceled the plan to cut trees. He needed to save every bit of energy. Building wooden barricade green. Durability 150 out of 150. Construction cost 1 energy point. Description: a 1x1 wooden barricade. It has sharp stakes at the bottom that dig into the ground, helping to slow down and block small and medium creatures from charging forward. Li Wei quickly completed 16 construction tasks, just enough to enclose the farmland, leaving only a 2-meter exit facing the watchtower. After arranging the construction sequence, the two of them pushed open the wooden door and prepared to gather flowers. The supporting pillars crossed and leaned against each other, wrapped tightly with tough vines and layered grass to secure them. The middle section was reinforced with thin wooden beams, slanting diagonally, also wrapped with vines and fibers. The top of the tower was a small platform, only 1 by 1 meter, with a low wooden fence around the edge. Not bad. Li Wei looked up and said, with this, Chiyu's safety was greatly improved. Picking flowers was not easy. Fortunately, the queen bee had found a flower field before. Talking about the queen bee, she seemed to have started evolving. The increase was small, but it clearly showed that this little life was quietly changing in this new environment. The hillside was covered with an unknown purple flower. Occasionally, worker bees landed on Li Wei's shoulders and arms, gently touching him with their sensitive antennae, showing closeness and joy. Back at the shelter, 8 barricades had been completed, and work on the remaining 6 was ongoing. The barricades required 14 units of energy, making flower crowns needed 2 points, and they still needed to craft 2 more sets of stone arrows to ensure enough supplies. Li Wei asked Chun Yun to handle the matter of purchasing supplies. He then took out a pickaxe and silently dug a deep hole at the entrance of the reserved passage. Around the trap, Li Wei also laid a thick layer of branches. The barricades were finished, and Li Wei quickly moved on to the next task, making flower crown headbands. Filling it with stones and branches powered by energy, a batch of 20 sharp-headed stone arrows was quickly produced. Chun Yun first took out stored illusion mushrooms, patiently mashed them into a sticky pulp in a wooden bowl. Next, she opened a wooden bottle containing spider venom, dipping the arrow tips into the dark green deadly liquid, ensuring the poison seeped into every stone arrowhead. 60 arrows with a strange machine were stored in an arrow quiver. Even the 11 crows caught today in the bird trap, Li Wei lost the desire to check or deal with them and simply stored them away. Li Wei took out the obsidian blade, its cold surface reflecting the flickering fire. Li Wei overall strength: 1830, 1921. 18 is equal to 106 equipment. He looked at his own stats, a result of his efforts over the past 7 days. Grayish-white mist was silently spreading from an unknown deep place, beginning to swallow the distant mountains' treetops and the last struggling rays of sunlight. The pressure and fear in the darkness, they had both experienced it. In this suppressed environment, fighting in the fog was even more challenging. The Mandela grass that had slipped out again was now surprisingly quiet, its leaves curled up next to his shoe no longer making the chattering noise they used to. The shelter's door was wide open. Through the flickering firelight, they could see the outside completely swallowed by swirling, thick fog. However, the fear that once made their scalps tingle, like a prickling sensation on their backs, and the feeling of being coldly washed by unseen forces had disappeared. He took a deep breath, and for the first time during the night, stepped out of the shelter's door. There was no mental shock as he expected, and no shadow lunged out of the fog. He quickly climbed the watchtower and lit a torch placed at the top. The fire struggled to tear through the fog, pushing the visible range outward by a few meters. "Do you think it's because of this fog?" she asked, watching the slow, swirling gray and white ahead. "Chased away or replaced them, perhaps." The hellish difficulty has at least been lowered to hard mode. Even so, neither of them relaxed. Soon an eerie fluctuation swept through their minds without warning. It wasn't a sound or a scene, but more like a warning directly imprinted on their consciousness. It's coming. The first shadow broke through the fog wall and appeared at the edge, illuminated by the firelight. Monster Mist Wolf. Green level. First overall. Strength: 30. Health: 100. Ability: Fog Concealment. Description: a wolf that has been transformed by long-term exposure to the eternal fog. Once the evil wolf appeared, it almost didn't hesitate. It used its limbs to rush straight toward the shelter at the center of the firelight. The wolf let out a short, mournful cry, struggled a few times, then stopped moving. Chunyun's finger that was knocking the arrow relaxed slightly. They ignored their fallen comrades and charged directly toward the barrier made of stakes, as well as the trap that had already been tested once by the monster. The sound of heavy bodies falling echoed repeatedly, and 2 more wolves fell into the pit. They trampled over their dead, using their flesh and blood to fill the bottom of the pit. The wolf that had been pierced was soon stomped into a shapeless mass. He took out a rough clay jar firebomb from his storage space, aimed at the densest part of the wolves near the edge of the pit, and threw it with all his strength. The clay jar shattered loudly when it hit a wolf's back. "This needs to be lit manually," Li Wei muttered. He took a deep breath, then flicked the nearly burnt-out cigarette in his hand. A sudden burst of orange light expanded rapidly, instantly engulfing the area and illuminating everything around clearly. At the boundary between light and shadow, countless glowing green eyes appeared. Nearly 100 foggy wolves silently formed a semicircle, blocking their shelter and small barricade completely. Most of the foggy wolves were crowded at the entrance Li Wei had prepared, temporarily blocked by the sudden burst of flames. Some even backed up a few steps, then ran and jumped over the barricades, trying to clear the height in one leap. At this moment, the tall shadow deep in the fog sea raised its head and let out a different kind of howl. She immediately drew her bow, and an arrow shot out swiftly, hitting a wolf that had just charged out of the flames still burning. He had thought that without mental pressure, he only needed to deal with the physical monsters, relying on defenses and ranged attacks to hold them off. The wolf pack, upon receiving the command, suddenly changed their attack pattern. They no longer charged blindly. They used their burning bodies to slap at the fire and their blackened corpses to smother the flames. Dai Li Wei shouted fiercely, continuously, throwing remaining fire bottles from his storage into the densest part of the wolves. However, the ferocity of the foggy wolves also seemed to be fully ignited. A fierce wolf with flames flickering over its body and half its fur, blackened forcefully, emerged from the fire. Chunyun quickly aimed her bow and shot an arrow into its open mouth, piercing through its brain. At the gap, a faint wolf head appeared again, and more wolves were trying to break through. Li Wei was going down. Li Wei acted quickly, his voice sharp like a bullet. "Leave it to him." Li Wei, Chunyun called out urgently. He reached into his storage space and pulled out a wolf fang club. When he was about 2 meters above the ground, he spotted a wolf rushing in below and leapt down. The wolf fang club, heavy with his full weight, smashed into the side of a wolf's head. When he got up, he had already put away the wolf fang club. His obsidian blade was drawn its cold edge, cutting a dark arc in the firelight. Arrows shot out in rapid succession, targeting wolves trying to break through the flames or damage the barricades the most. Wolves hit by the arrows often stumbled after a few steps and then fell into the flames, twitching. His oak shield blocked one's attack while his right hand wielded his blade, slashing open another wolf's belly, blood staining his armor. Seeing more fog-covered wolves rushing in, Li Wei blocked a claw strike and shouted without looking back, "Throw them far away to expand the fire circle." Xin Yan heard him and grabbed the burning bottles from her storage space, then threw them with all her strength. A foul, sharp wind hit his face. He lowered his left arm and precisely angled his oak shield to block. A dull sound echoed as the wolf's claws scraped fiercely against the shield, making a grating noise that was hard to bear. The wolf's head was knocked upward and hot blood splashed on a half of Li Wei's face, carrying a strong, nauseating smell. The wolf's attack was temporarily stopped by the fire, but this breathing space was very short. It stepped forward steadily, and the wolves in front of it respectfully parted to the sides. It was more than twice as large as an ordinary wolf, with shoulders nearly as tall as a human when on all fours. Monster Fog Mountain Wolf. Overall strength 99. Health 250 per 250. Its fur and muscles are unusually resilient from years of soaking in the fog. Greatly increases the attack desire, pain tolerance, and attack coordination of all nearby fog wolves. She drew her longbow tighter, aiming her arrow directly at the Fog Mountain Wolf. But the wolf turned around suddenly, dodging the arrow. He firmly planted his oak shield in front of him with his obsidian battle blade across his chest. He knew that this leader was the real threat, far beyond an ordinary wolf acting on instinct. The leader of the evil wolves let out a deep growl. Instead, it turned sharply to the side where a section of the barrier was slightly loosened from previous attacks. Wood chips flew everywhere. In just one strike, the green quality barrier, post-durability, dropped nearly 1 per 5, showing clear structural damage. Chun Yun seized the barely noticeable moment after the attack to loosen her grip on the bowstring again. The giant wolf's massive body lowered itself, and the arrow brushed past its thick shoulder fur, flying into the dense fog behind. The scattered evil wolves rushing in had been temporarily cleared away. But outside, under the intimidation and command of the wolves, the pack changed tactics. The entire defense line was under heavy pressure. Chun Yun clear out all the fog wolves. He issued a pre-prepared command to the queen bee. After evolving, the queen bee no longer needed to be close to communicate telepathically. A dark cloud burst out from the hive's entrance. Inside the hive, only 5,000 newly born worker bees and the queen bee itself remained to sustain the colony. They hovered briefly in the air, then, like piranhas, sensing blood, they charged toward the surrounding wolves. The individual bees are very small, and their flight paths are quick and unpredictable. More bees bravely land on the fierce wolf, especially targeting weak spots like the eyes, nose, mouth, and ears, stabbing their stingers into these areas. One fierce wolf is stung by hundreds of bees at once, causing it to scream loudly and roll on the ground, scratching wildly. The venom from the bees may not be deadly, but the intense pain, numbness, and harassment quickly disrupt the wolf's organized attack. The bee swarm consumes energy at an astonishing rate, gradually reducing the wolf pack's numbers. After this battle, the bee colony will probably be silent for a long time. The damaged side of the barrier finally groans under the strain and breaks apart. A gap large enough for a wolf to pass through appears, but there are no wolves left to follow and fight. Its huge body shoots forward like a black-gray cannonball, heading straight for Li Wei. Li Wei quickly raises his oak shield in front of him, lowering his center of gravity. At the moment of impact, Li Wei feels as if he's been hit head-on by a charging rhinoceros. He only stops when his back crashes heavily against the sturdy wooden wall of the shelter with a loud bang. He clenches his teeth, forcing down the rising blood foam. Just as his sight begins to clear slightly, he sees the huge wolf once again closing in like a shadow, its bloody maw snapping toward his head with a stench of death. At the same time, whoosh, an arrow shot precisely into the corner of the wolf's open mouth. The poison-tipped arrow had some effect on the wolf, making it a bit sluggish, but it didn't become paralyzed like a normal evil wolf. The feeling was wrong. In the end, it only opened a shallow cut, with dark red blood beads oozing out, but it didn't cause serious injury. The wolf, in pain and furious, suddenly rose up, slapping down with its other front paw more fiercely. Li Wei barely managed to raise his shield to block. This time, a tiny crack appeared in the center of the oak shield, almost slipping from his grasp. The powerful impact sent Li Wei flying, and he could no longer suppress the surging blood. His chest felt as if hammered by a heavy iron mallet, aching painfully, and his vision darkened. Despite his exhausted muscles, she tremblingly raised her bow and arrow, trying to hold the wolf back. Its icy and cruel purple eyes showed even more coldness and ruthlessness, clearly seeing that Li Wei was at his limit. His overall strength was higher than the wolf's, but he couldn't fight it directly. He could only barely manage with his equipment. This time all its muscles tensed up and its dark purple eyes burned like ghostly flames. Rushing forward with a roar, speed and strength reached their peak. Relying on his last instinct, he raised his nearly shattered shield again to block in front of him. She locked onto the fast-moving giant figure, predicted its movements, and used all her strength to shoot her last arrow. The energy arrow turned into a black streak, piercing into the rear leg muscles of the wolf that was unable to dodge its attack. However, the giant wolf only trembled in its hind leg muscles, and its charge almost didn't slow down. It seemed that the pain was insignificant compared to its desire to tear apart the enemy in front of it. Under the attack of the giant claw, the oak shield shattered completely, and the wooden armor protecting her body broke apart and flew away. The intense pain made Li Wei black out, and the strength in half of his body faded away. Just as the fog wolf pounced, Chun Yun shot an energy arrow, and a nearly imperceptible red shadow flashed out from the treehouse. Gently touching it, injected something into the wolf's body, then quickly withdrew and landed on Li Wei's bloodied shoulder. It was the queen bee. The wolf that had been touched by it suddenly stiffened. The wolf no longer paid attention to Li Wei nearby and rolled wildly on the ground. Li Wei supported his battle blade with his right arm, forcing himself to stay steady despite blood loss and severe pain. He clenched his teeth, his eyes filled with fierce determination to turn the tide of the battle. Using all his remaining strength, he stabbed and slashed wildly at the wolf's softer belly with his obsidian battle blade. With a strong flow of wolf blood mixed with a heavy smell, it splashed all over him. His dark purple pupils slowly lost focus. The floral crown on his head was long gone. The once mighty leader of the fog wolves lay in a pool of blood with no sign of life. Li Wei raised his blood-stained right hand, barely patting her hand with a weak voice that sounded strange and hoarse. The fog was still thick and heavy, covering everything around. The wolf bodies and the carcasses were tangled together, a mess, but no more evil wolves stood. The fog was still dense, but the most intense wave of fog seemed to have temporarily receded. Go and heal the fog wolves that are still alive. He wanted to lift his right hand to pass the obsidian sword, but his arm was so heavy it only trembled slightly. When she heard his words, she sniffed hard, wiped her face with her arm, and reached out to grab the sword that had fallen near him. In her ear, the queen bee gently landed on Li Wei's intact right shoulder. "But it's okay," he responded inwardly, forcing himself to gather a little strength. The traps, burning bottles, poisoned arrows, and swarms of bees. But if only the fog wolf had charged 10 minutes earlier. If only the queen bee had been hit in the chaos. The luck of victory felt colder than the wounds themselves. Chun Yun, holding her battle blade, staggered toward the still twitching evil wolf nearby and struck with her sword. At the same time, wisps of grayish-white mist emerged from the bodies of the dead fog wolves, beginning to peel away and gather. Above the wolf corpses, several grayish-white objects about the size of coins condensed and then gently fell into the blood pool. Every creature that surrenders to the mist releases this item upon death, carrying a faint breath of the great fog. Li Wei's blurry vision caught the description appearing on his phone. On the large fog wolf corpse, the glow that emerged was even more noticeable. Low-level soul fragment, low-level water element fragment, and a magnificent treasure chest quietly lying beside the wolf corpse, shining with a gentle silver-white metallic luster. All of these were purple quality. Chun Yun finished off the last dying wolf, dragging her blood-stained blade back. She knelt again beside Li Wei hurriedly, trying to cover the wound on his shoulder. Warm blood immediately gushed from her fingers. Li Wei, using all his strength, raised his relatively intact right hand and gently touched her cold hand. "How could Li Wei just leave you here?" Chun Yun listened, but instead of stopping, she cried even harder, her shoulders shaking violently. Eternal Realm. 10,086. Human Chat Group. Currently, 69,721 out of 100,000 members online. This number suddenly made his foggy mind clear for a moment. The attack tonight was so intense. He instinctively swiped the screen, quickly scrolling through the rapidly moving chat messages. 10 wolves. The barricades work great. The wolves ran into them and got tangled up. Thanks to Brother Yang Tong for the warning. Tao Likin found a wooden treasure chest and got a green weapon. Galway 15 wolves came here. The group was lively, filled with thanks for the warning and joy over leveling up and finding new gear. Thanks to early warning and good preparation, they avoided danger and even had a good harvest. Her eyes full of confusion and a hint of unfairness. Li Wei looked at the noisy group chat, feeling a deeper ache in his chest. Two people shouldn't be so different, he muttered, a mix of doubt and faint suspicion swirling in his mind. Let's go back to the shelter. Chunyun clenched her teeth, temporarily stopping the bleeding. As they headed back to the house in the shadowy corner of the wall, a mandrake plant quietly peeked out its head. Seeing Li Wei covered in blood and being half dragged, it was so frightened that it quickly covered its mouth with 2 leaves. Chunyun had no time to pay attention to it. Chunyun quickly took off her relatively clean outer coat and covered Li Wei with it. When she looked back, she saw mandrake grass arrive at her feet without her noticing. Chunyun looked down. Mandrake grass, with its face tilted up, stretched out a tiny root and pointed at Li Wei. "Are you saying you want to give this to him?" "To eat?" Chunyun asked hoarsely. Chunyun remembered the first time she saw it being told it was a high-energy plant with unknown effects. She found a flat piece of wood and placed mandrake grass on it. Chunyun took out a sharp-edged stone fragment aimed at the tendril that was actively extending and cut. Chirp, a completely different cry of pain came from mandrake grass. At the cut root, a small amount of clear, shiny sap oozed out. Chunyun quickly put down the stone fragment, carefully picked it up, and placed it back into the soft soil of the flower pot. Mandrake grass used its roots to dig through the soil a few times, then replanted itself. She picks up a piece of the milky root, places it in a clean wooden bowl, and carefully crushes it. She adds a little warm water and stirs well. Then she kneels by the bed, gently opens Li Wei's mouth with one hand, and holds the wooden bowl with the other. Miraculously, soon after the medicine enters his stomach, the bleeding from his head, which was still slowly seeping through a simple bandage, gradually stops. Until now, the queen bee, who had been sitting at the head of the bed, flaps her wings and flies closer, gently touching Li Wei's forehead with her antennae. Outside, the battlefield has not yet been cleared. The fog coins, glowing fragments, and the silver treasure chest are still scattered in the pool of blood. She glances at Li Wei, who is still frowning in sleep, then at the withered-looking mandrake plant in the corner. Chunyun stands at the door, taking a deep breath of the cold, foul air. She bends down, picks up a blood-stained grayish fog coin from the ground, wipes it, and puts it into her storage space. He instinctively reaches for his phone beside him to check today's weather. Weather: heavy fog, 16 to 23 degrees Celsius. Sunrise countdown about 1 hour. Usually at this time, Chunyun wakes up first and then nudges him awake. Using the light from the screen, he turned over and got out of bed, walking to the fire pit to add a few branches. On the workbench, last night's loot was piled up, and Chunyun was sleeping soundly on the other side of the bed. The damaged wooden armor he wore had been taken off. A rough-edged scab stretched from below his collarbone to the middle of his upper arm like a fierce burn mark. Besides a slight itch and some tightness when moving, he felt almost no pain. He clearly remembered the force of that last strike. The wound was deep, almost reaching the bone. Normally, he would expect a high fever, pus from the wound, or even confusion. But in reality, he was standing here and his wound was healing well. His eyes fixed on this overall strength score, which was 30. He walked to the wall, using the firelight to look at himself in the reflection in the water basin. Not the bulky muscles built in a gym, but the smooth contours shaped by jungle survival. Chunyun had woken up, her eyes bloodshot and her face showing lingering exhaustion. Her voice suddenly stopped and her eyes widened. Li Wei turned around, fully revealing the injury on his left shoulder. Chunyun's breath caught. This last night it was still. Could it be Mandela grass? Li Wei had no memory of what happened after he lost consciousness. It came to you on its own, and Li Wei had to cut a root of it. Soon your blood will stop and you'll calm down. Usually the 2 main leaves stand upright and look lively, but now they droop and look dull, clearly exhausted. Li Wei walked over, crouched by the flower pot, and gently touched the hanging leaves with his finger. The leaves moved very slightly, as if responding. Li Wei returned to the fire pit and looked at the pile of mist coins on the work table. It's all part of his job. Li Wei couldn't wait to see them. They sat by the fire, moving the pile of items on the work table into the light. Inside, it seemed to have gray-purple mist slowly swirling. Material: low-level soul fragment, purple. Description: a condensed essence of a powerful creature's soul upon death. Alchemists and soul artisans of the Herat sect desire this item greatly. Chun-Yun softly read the key part of the description, her brow furrowing. Li Wei ran his finger over the cold surface of the crystal and looked up at Chun-Yun. If it weren't for your shots last night, they would have been exhausted long ago. Chun-Yun's lips moved, but seeing Li Wei's unwavering gaze, she finally nodded. She understood the importance of priorities, and newly weighed decisions were for the best overall strength. Li Wei held the soul fragment silently, preparing to use it. The swirling mist inside seemed to find an exit, transforming into a solid light stream that slowly flowed into the longbow held by Chun-Yun. The curve of the bow limbs appeared sharper with faint dark patterns, resembling wolf hair, and a faint pulse could be felt at the grip. The bow in Chun-Yun's hand had changed dramatically. Exclusive weapon, 100-pound wolf seat bow. Blue, rank level. 11 attributes, overall strength. 40, durability, 40 per 50. Every 3 hours, the bow automatically condenses an energy arrow, which can be stored in a special quiver. The energy arrow lasts up to 3 days. You can try to establish a soul contract with a willing or near-death wolf-like creature through this bow. Chun-Yun gently touched the cold bow, feeling the power within. Especially the last ability, dominate the evil wolf, which made her heartbeat slightly faster. The soul fragment's original owner determines the direction of its enhancement. Li Wei pondered thoughtfully. The second item was a low-level water element fragment, entirely clear and light blue. Material, a low-level water element fragment, purple. Description, contains a small amount of pure water attribute energy. Similar to the previous shattered water element fragment, it contains a small amount of energy, a trace but pure. Li Wei picked up the broken piece and walked over to the beehive next to the wall. As he approached, a wave of urgent and eager emotion came from inside the hive. Looking at the queen bee, which was different from the others, Li Wei checked her attributes. She was an ordinary bee, a level 0 creature. Now animal blood bee, queen blue. Special trait, blood poison. The venom secreted by the bee has mutated, causing intense nerve pain and blood erosion. Special trait, blood. The only queen in the hive, she is the only one able to reproduce offspring. The latest batch of eggs laid shows a faint amber color with a hint of blood red. Li Wei gently placed the cold water element fragment in the center of the hive's platform. Finally, there was the grand silver treasure chest. Treasure chest, silver storage box, purple rank. First level, can contain 2 to 4 items with the highest purple quality. Li Wei pushed the box toward Chun-Yun. Chun-Yun didn't refuse. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and held her breath to focus. Wait, Li Wei needed to wash his hands. Chun-Yun carefully washed her hands with clean water, then knelt in front of the treasure chest, clasped her hands together, and softly recited, "Spirit of heaven, spirit of earth, Supreme Lord, please show your power." The lid slowly lifted, and in an instant a bright purple light flashed and disappeared. Wow, it even has a special opening effect. 3 purple lights. In his excitement, he reached out and hugged Chun-Yun next to him, then playfully bit her cheek. It was only palm-sized but very lifelike, with detailed feathers inside that could be seen clearly. Building crow nest, purple. Durability, 50 per 50. When placed, it will automatically attract nearby crow groups to settle. The leader crow of the nest will establish a basic connection with the builder and can provide daily updates about the surrounding area, such as unusual activity, resource changes, or other animal movements. Over time, the crow group can expand the nest on its own until it reaches the maximum size allowed by the space. A fixed and safe nest is a tempting target for them. Previously, Chun-Yun wanted to keep a crow cage for herself, but it was unstable and attracted bees, so she didn't rush. How about in the treetops? Do you think it will work? Book honey medicine paste recipe. Rank level 1. Effect, after learning, you will understand how to extract medicinal properties from honey. Introduction, a natural remedy from an ancient druid sect that has long vanished. Knowledge every survivor dreams of. They'll have honey in the future and they can find herbs, Xinyan said happily. Unlike the crow cage, which is popular, but only useful in emergencies, people still prefer weapons, armor, and healing supplies when it really matters. Relic 5 Virtues Logging Axe. Rank level 1. Attributes, overall strength. When chopping trees, this axe absorbs the life energy within, slowly restoring its own durability. During continuous chopping, the axe gradually stores energy. Current energy 0 per 100. This weapon is already dead. It can repair itself and store power. The gathering power trait is clearly useful in battle. Each of these 3 items perfectly targets their current weaknesses or needs. Li Wei looked again at the description in the silver treasure chest. This realization added a new complex feeling to both of them about this fog-covered world. He habitually checked the map to plan which direction to cut would more efficiently. It was not unexplored darkness, but the areas that had been previously explored and lit up, including the beehive flower sea and the frequently chopped trees. The entire map seemed to have been reset, leaving only a faint light beneath their shelter. Thick grayish-white fog like a solid wall blocked the entrance. Farther away, the barricade's traps and wolf carcasses were hidden in the rolling fog. He walked back to the fire pit and gently leaned his axe against the wall. When the view finally cleared, Li Wei and Chun Yun stood silently at the shelter entrance, staring at the unfamiliar scene before them. Looking around, all they saw were ancient, massive evergreen trees that needed several people to hug. Their treehouse was hidden among them, inconspicuous. Did they get moved somewhere else? Li Wei said nothing, his gaze sweeping the ground. It was a mix of burnt fur and the odd of monster meat cooked through. The huge corpse of the fog wolf lay in a pool of blood, dark red blood soaking into the soil and hardening into a solid mass. The berry bushes that had been transplanted and started to grow new leaves now only had a few charred, curled branches with a couple of withered yellow leaves hanging at the top, trembling sadly in the morning breeze. Go peel off the usable wolf skins. Hive queens, send out the worker bees that can still fly. Check around them and see what the situation is. Li Wei calmly assigned tasks. He had just finished processing the 4 wolf skins when more wolf skins appeared. Li Wei picked up a stone shovel and headed to a flat area behind the shelter. He chose a spot, gripped the rough wooden handle with both hands, took a deep breath, and tentatively pushed the shovel into the soil. He expected to need full strength and to encounter tangled roots, but nothing like that happened. The shovel seemed to cut into soft, compressed wood, smoothly sinking into the soil up to the shoulder of the shovel. Li Wei paused, looked at his hand, then at the effortless result. His movements were fluid. Every time he exerted force, he could clearly feel the muscles in his body harnessing strength far beyond before with precise control. It's not just about the numbers on the panel, but a full upgrade of body functions and efficiency. The shovel flew through the dirt. Tossing it aside, and a neat rectangular pit was rapidly taking shape. This morning, Li Wei looked at the large group for a while. Many people thanked them for the early warning and asked about forming a faction, wondering when they would officially start. From so far away, just staying alive is hard enough. And yet you still want to form alliances. How many people are left in the big group now? That's fewer than before the attack. This is after they gave the warning and everyone prepared. Then he teased, have you decided on a team name, Morning Star? Huh, that's a bit childish. Li Wei couldn't help but laugh. Li Wei stroked his chin and joked Protection Umbrella Company. Chun Yun stretched out the word playfully, but her eyes were full of smiles. They looked at each other and smiled, and the heavy work of cleaning seemed a bit easier. Someone who can make that kind of thing must be in chemistry or a related field. Chun Yun wiped her hands and opened the system interface to operate. Her friend request was quickly accepted. Chun Yun, hello. Li Wei was Chun Yun. Li Wei bought your Molotov cocktail before. Hello, Chun Yun? His reply suddenly became very detailed. The main idea was to use the flammability of animal fat and the adhesive fire-enhancing properties of certain resins. Li Wei tried several different resins. Li Wei experimented with baked clay, but needing to manually ignite it before throwing was a flaw. The text is filled with simple chemical formulas and descriptions of material handling, showing a strong passion for technology. Chun Yun patiently finished reading and responded at the right moment. Li Wei really needs someone with your expertise to join. Wang Weilin responded quickly this time. A few people have approached him before, but it sounded more like forming factions, which Li Wei find pointless. Yushun are practical. Small chat groups use about the same energy as private messages, so they can be used often. A group of 100,000 is like the initial large regional chat, where one message costs very little energy. In the new Umbrella Resource Sharing Group, Chun Yun briefly introduced everyone. Li Wei Chun Yun officially established the Umbrella Resource Sharing Group and declare the following. Anyone joining will share information exchange skills, fight external dangers, and overcome survival challenges. There are 45 spots available only for those who are practical, honest, and willing to work together. The specific selection of members and initial communication will be handled by Chun Yun. Only having a strong fist, abundant resources, and real strength mattered. After digging a big hole, Li Wei and Chun Yun began dragging over wolf carcasses, focusing on the main bones, skulls, limb bones, and spines. One wolf pelt thicker and tougher wolf bones, and 4 long prominent fangs, all purple quality materials. They pushed all the wolf carcasses into the deep pit, filled it with soil, and pressed it down. Next, they needed to release the crow's nest. Li Wei looked up, scanning the tall, cloud-reaching trees around his eyes, shining with anticipation, and thought, "This is the spot." He was about 15 meters above the ground, standing on a thick, horizontal branch. He took out a small model of the crow's nest about the size of his palm and held it in his hand. "Would you like to place the building? Crow's nest here." In less than 2 minutes, a large, intricate bird's nest, nearly 2 meters in diameter, was securely settled among the branches. It naturally fit the branches supporting it. Then Li Wei took out the crows that had been stored in the bird-catching baskets from his storage space. The blackbirds suddenly appeared in the air, instinctively flapping their wings in panic. One by one, 20 crows were placed into their new spacious home. Building crow nest. Purple leader. None number of residents 20 out of 30. Group taming level 60 per 100. Activated after the leader is produced. Starting taming level is already 60. No wonder this building is a product of the mist. He thought it would take several days of feeding to make these wild birds accept this place. Finally, one slightly bolder crow stretched out its neck, quickly pecked a piece, and swallowed it. More crows joined in, pecking at the food. The fiberglass rope slipped off, and the freed crows flapped their wings but did not fly away immediately. They just paced around the edge of the nest, groomed their feathers, or curiously looked at the forest canopy below, which they had never seen before. It's easier to go up than to come down. When his feet finally stepped on the thick layer of fallen leaves, he felt a bit of sweat on his palms. Back at the shelter, he closed his eyes and sank his consciousness into the connection with the hive. "How is the surrounding area?" "You're back?" The queen's mind message arrived. "In the north, there are many red fruits. Are those red berries? Keep exploring. You can fly a bit farther, but be careful and stay safe." "Li Wei will make sure the children are careful," she replied. "Honey, it seems the bee colony found a large patch of berries to the north not far away. Let's go." They took their weapons and containers, following a worker bee designated as their guide, heading deeper into the forest. Towering, ancient trees formed a dense, impenetrable canopy, filtering most of the sunlight into a dark green gloom. Underfoot was a soft layer of fallen leaves, almost silent when stepped on. Huge tree trunks were covered with fuzzy, dark green moss and patches of lichen. Various unknown shrubs grew sparsely among them, all inedible plants. Chun Yun stopped beside a large decayed tree, partly buried in leaves. Plant glow mushroom green level first. Its flesh contains nerve-numbing and blood-clotting toxins. The glowing mushrooms were poisonous, but Li Wei saw medicine where a frightened survivor would only see danger. That difference had carried him from a barren wasteland to a shelter built with blood, honey, fire, and trust. Chun Yun stayed at his side. The queen bee kept searching, and every hard-earned resource had become part of their strength. The Eternal Realm had taken their old world away, yet it had failed to take their judgment, their bond, or their will to survive. Li Wei stepped deeper into the ancient forest beside Chun Yun, no longer a helpless beekeeper but a survivor who had learned how to turn every living thing around him into hope.